And welcome to all of you. Welcome to our faculty and staff and students. Especially, I want to welcome our members of our Board of Trustees, Art Riggs and Dan Bradbury. Thank you guys for joining us as well. And it's a special pleasure this afternoon to introduce Dan Bradbury, who's going to introduce our speaker. Let me just tell you that Dan has been affiliated with KGI for quite a few years, starting as an advisory council member, and then moving to become a leading member of our Board of Trustees. Other than that, when he's not doing those important tasks, he keeps himself sort of busy, I think, being the CEO of Amylin Pharmaceuticals, and he can probably tell you some surfing stories as well. So it's a real pleasure to introduce Dan Bradbury to all of you. And Dan, please, if you will introduce our speaker. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. So, thank you, Shelley, for the introduction. It's always a great pleasure to come here to KGI. As Shelley said, I've been involved with KGI originally as a member of the Advisory Council and then as a member of the board for the last 6 years. And it's amazing to see this organization, this college grow in the way that it has. One of the things, though, that is one of the privileges you get working in the biopharmaceutical industry and the life sciences industry is that you get to work with some really, really cool people. And one of my, well, great privilege I have this afternoon is to introduce to you a friend and a colleague, Kiran here, who is somebody that I've been working with for the last couple of years. Let me tell you a little bit about this lady. She really is an extraordinary member of the life sciences community. She formed a new biopharmaceutical company. Actually, it wasn't a biopharmaceutical company originally, and she'll tell you all about that, back in 1978 in India. And today, Biocon is the largest biotechnology company in India. I went to visit their facility in India now, when was it? Nearly 18 months ago now?
2 years, yeah.
2 years ago now, which means I'm late going back, by the way. I saw that look. And I have to tell you, I was completely blown away. This facility is absolutely phenomenal. It's a 90-acre facility with some of the most groundbreaking, state-of-the-art technology that you'll ever see anywhere in the world. In fact, my comment to Kiran at the time was, you know, Genentech would kill for this. In terms of the capability that they have. But the thing that has always impressed me about Kiran, and I think one of the reasons why I so much enjoy working with her, is because of the way that she thinks about innovation and how innovation can change outcomes and how it can change society. And in particular, Kiran has a passion for how innovation can change India and what can be done to change the way India relates to the global community and global business community going forward. And one of the things that we both have a common view on is how innovation, the creation of new products in the biopharmaceutical industry is changing and how rapidly it's changing. And the opportunity that we have working globally these days to leverage the skills, the strengths of different organizations in different ways that have been thought of in the past. And so, full disclosure here, Amylin and Biocon have a relationship that we started just last year, working on a novel polypeptide, which, by the way, is one that has mechanisms of actions. It has dual pharmacologies, something unlike anything that's ever been produced, potentially for a treatment of diabetes. But to manufacture it, you need very specialized technology. And you also need access to some very, very large capacity for manufacturing as well. Something that Biocon happens to have an awful lot of. And one of the things that we constantly comment to each other is how much progress we've made in such a short period of time with two companies working together and leveraging the strengths of both organizations. So it's a great pleasure to introduce Kiran. I will mention one other thing to you before she stands up and talks about Biocon, what they're doing, and her business going forward, is because it's something that she won't tell you herself. So it's my opportunity to embarrass my friend, and that is that you should know that Kiran this year was actually nominated by Time magazine as one of the top 100 influential people in the world. and was actually written up by Lance Armstrong as somebody who not only has obviously been a great success with regards to what she's done in the biotechnology industry, but also somebody who gives back greatly to her community as well. And it's one thing we talk about all the time. The privilege of working in the life sciences industry is that you're part of something that makes a difference in the world, makes a difference in society. And I think Kiran will show you how that's done from her perspective. Kiran, over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Shelley. That was a very, very generous and kind introduction. You know, I'm absolutely delighted to be here this evening. It's all thanks to Dan. And, you know, I've just been hearing all about the wonderful things you're doing at the Keck Graduate Institute here, and I can tell you that I'm very envious of what's happening in this part of the world. I think there's a lot of potential and opportunities for, you know, India and Indian universities, Indian institutes, and for our own company Biocon to really collaborate with KGI. So from that point of view, I think it's a big eye-opener for me. You know, I was asked to basically share my entrepreneurial journey with all the young students here today, and I'm going to try and do that. And you know, you can see that I've captioned this talk as delivering affordable innovation. And I think a very important part of delivering affordable innovation is about collaborative innovation. And I think that's what I'd really like to sort of weave through the story that I'm going to try and share with you today. There are many people who have influenced my thought process, and one such person who unfortunately we lost very recently was someone who lived in this area, Professor C.K. Prahlad. And he had this wonderful concept of connecting the world in a very interesting way, and he kept talking about global resourcing. And I think that's what Dan was talking about. I think collaborative innovation is really about learning to network, learning to connect, learning to leverage capabilities and intellectual capacities in different parts of the world, and really through that process really do things in a very affordable way. I think we are all very aware of the fact that the world today is very challenged with the cost of innovation. I think what worked all these decades is now beginning to collapse. I think we are beginning to see that innovation is just becoming very expensive, and people are now, you know, very risk averse. They don't want to invest in innovation just because the old model is not working anymore. And I think what we are trying to sort of address today is creating this new model. And I think companies like Amylin and Biocon are beginning to create that new model, and I think it's a very exciting model, and I'll share this model with you as I talk about my own journey. So let me give you a snapshot of Biocon. I started the company in 1978 as an industrials enzymes company. And it was a biotech startup. Maybe I just should sort of backtrack a little bit and say that I actually qualified as a brewmaster from Australia before I started Biocon. My goals were set on pursuing a brewing career in India. But unfortunately, my gender went against me. I think most breweries didn't want to have a woman brewmaster in their breweries. So I think it was almost on a rebound that I started a biotech company instead. In fact, I very often say that you know, brewing is one of the oldest biotechnologies known to man. And I think it was quite an easy transition for me to get used to the idea of not having to pursue a brewing career, but then starting up a biotech company instead. So that's what I did. I started Biocon in 1978 as a joint venture with a small Irish company, and the whole focus was to produce industrial enzymes. And many of these enzymes were actually used by the brewing industry. So that's how I kept consoling myself, saying, I've still got something to do with the brewing industry. But what happened over the years was that we became very successful at developing novel enzymes for a large number of industrial applications, from brewing to distilling to fruit juice to textiles to starch processing and a number of other, even biofuels. So we did a lot of that. But I had a very unique opportunity in the late 90s. That was a time when my Irish partners got acquired by Unilever, and Unilever then sold the business to ICI, and that was the time when I then acquired the shares from Unilever and decided to go independent. And it also coincided with the time when we basically decided that enzymes was not going to give us the kind of growth momentum and growth trajectory that we were all looking at. So what we did was to see how we could leverage those biotech capabilities that we had developed around enzymes and see whether we could apply it to biopharmaceuticals. So as you can see from this slide, in 2004, we actually took this company public, but we took it public as a biopharmaceutical enterprise, because that's what we did between 1998 and 2004. We actually underwent a transformation of our business model from enzymes to biopharmaceuticals. Again, I want to share with all of you that entrepreneurship is a very evolutionary process. It's very unlikely that where you start is where you keep continuing, because I think most entrepreneurs will find that opportunities keep coming your way and you keep changing your course and you keep changing direction, and you finally sort of find your way and hone in on something that you finally then fix on and move ahead with. And if people ask me, where am I going to be 10 years from now, I really honestly can tell you, I have some idea, but things could be dramatically different in 10 years' time. So that's what this whole life sciences area is all about. That's what entrepreneurship is all about. But it's a very exciting journey. So we started as an enzymes company, became a biopharmaceuticals company. We listed in 2004. Our market cap is about $1.5 billion. We have consolidated revenues of $500 million. And what is interesting about our business model is that we have a business model that straddles both products and services, and I'll just talk about that a little later. We've also been very focused on innovation from the very start, and therefore we've focused a lot on creating a very strong patent portfolio. And that actually differentiates us quite strongly in the Indian business community. In terms of employees, we have a little over 4,000 employees, so it's a fairly large organization in terms of people. So the question is, how do we best describe what Biocon is today? And I think as a vision statement, I'd like to sort of see Biocon being described as an emerging global biopharmaceutical enterprise that is focused on developing affordable products and services for patients, partners, and healthcare systems across the world. Because we believe very strongly that what we'd like to do is to leverage the cost and talent base that India has to offer and see how we can develop affordable products and services the way I've just described. And what we are really committed to is to reduce the cost of therapy of especially chronic diseases like diabetes, cancer, and immune-mediated diseases. And the reason we have chosen to do this is because being in a country like India, we know how expensive it is to treat chronic diseases. And I think one of our main sort of focus areas was to see if we could really develop affordable therapies for chronic diseases. We are also committed to research and marketing partnerships that provide global access. Being in India, again, we've been very aware of the fact that accessibility and affordability are two very key components in the healthcare delivery space, and I think that's something which we're very concerned about. And we also are very committed to leveraging the India cost advantage to deliver high-value licensable R&D assets. So that's really to describe what the vision is. In terms of the company itself, we have the main company Biocon. We have two research services companies, Syngene and Clinigene. What Syngene does is offers discovery research services to a large number of global customers around the world, and what Clinigene offers is clinical development services to a large number of customers across the world. We also have a company which is called Biocon Biopharmaceuticals that's really focused on biomanufacturing, and we have a German subsidiary called Axicorp, which really is our footprint in Europe. In terms of our business model, like I just said, we have a very unique business model that straddles both products and services. What's very important for me to mention here is that we also have a very interesting self-financed R&D and manufacturing business model. This has actually happened because in India, the whole concept of venture funding is only something which is very recent. So when I started Biocon, it was very difficult to get venture funding. I started Biocon totally through a debt financing kind of business model. And over the decades, I think we've got very used to kind of financing our business through either debt finance, and of course over the years we've plowed back all our profits, and therefore we've been able to build a very robust business model that's really self-financed. We are actually a zero debt company, which is quite unique again. We also believe very strongly in strategic research and marketing partnerships, because again, going back to Dr. Prahlad's concept of global resourcing, we believe that getting into international markets can be very effectively done through regional marketing partnerships. Again, in the area of research, we believe that the most effective research models are partnered or collaborative research models, and we found that that's really worked very well for us. We have deliberately built a pipeline, an R&D pipeline that's very risk balanced between generics and novel programs, and that's something that has also stood us very well. And we believe that we've leveraged the India cost base very effectively to give us a very cost-effective new drug development model. And this has again allowed us to partner very effectively with companies that also have bought into this concept of leveraging this India cost base and India talent base. As I mentioned earlier, the research services business actually goes from discovery research services to clinical research. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but suffice to say that today there is an increasing need for looking at outsourcing a number of these research needs by global pharma, and I think Biocon has been very, very successful in creating a very strong research services profile through these companies. What is also very interesting is that just over the last 10 years, global R&D outsourcing has reached 21% of the total spend in 2009, as opposed to less than 1% in 1997. So over a 10-year period, you can see that there's been a huge shift of outsourced research services in this whole life sciences space. Our research services businesses have done extremely well. You can see that we've delivered a CAGR of 36% over the last 5 years. We work with all the large big pharma as well as a lot of biotech companies, both small and mid-sized biotech companies. And there are very attractive cost savings that these kind of models offer to companies, especially in the Western world. As I mentioned earlier, we have a very strong focus on biomanufacturing, and we have global scale manufacturing. We are amongst the largest producers of cholesterol reducing drugs called statins, and a range of immunosuppressants which we produce through fermentation. We are also Asia's largest insulin producers. Now, insulin is a very important drug category for us. We also have US FDA approved API and aseptic fill finish facilities on this 90-acre campus that Dan just referred to. Again, totally self-financed. And this now leads me to the whole research focus that we have in the company. As you can see from this slide, we have focused on diabetes, oncology, and autoimmune diseases. And you can also see from this slide that we've balanced it between novel programs and generic biologics. In the generic biologic space, we are focused on a portfolio of insulins and insulin analogs, and we have a group of monoclonal antibodies that are in the category of biogenerics. And in the novel programs, we have a number of monoclonal antibodies, and we also have a very ambitious program to develop the world's first oral insulin, which is insulin in a tablet. This here actually gives you an idea about the way we have developed a R&D pipeline that you can see quite a lot of them are in early stage, and it goes all the way up to late stage development. Many of them have actually entered the market as well. I'll particularly focus on 2 late stage programs. These are 2 novel programs. One, as I mentioned, is an oral insulin program. Again, this actually started as a collaborative research program. It was started as a collaborative research program with a small biotech company in North Carolina. This was a company that had a very interesting technology to deliver peptides orally through a small conjugation technology. And this is the conjugated peptide that we decided to develop as an oral insulin program. What is interesting about oral insulin is not that it's just about delivering insulin in a tablet, but it's really about delivering insulin in a very rapid acting way to the liver, which is really where you want insulin to be delivered. And then it has a very interesting and an enhanced kind of therapeutic effect. This program is actually undergoing a phase 3 pivotal proof of concept studies in India in type 2 diabetics. This is a blinded study which will be concluded by the end of this year. But in the meantime, we will also be doing other proof of concept studies in type 1 diabetics and in many other sort of diabetic settings. So this is something which we are very excited about, and we hope that things go well for us, because if it works, it can be a huge game changer in the field of diabetes management. This is another program that I'd really like to talk about, and again, I'm going to focus on the fact that this has again been a collaborative research program, and this time with a Cuban research institute. In Cuba, actually I visited Cuba on a recce mission about maybe 10 years ago, because I'd heard about the Cuban biotechnology kind of efforts. Went there, met up with this research institute in Havana, found some very, very interesting stuff they were doing in the area of immune therapies and monoclonal antibodies. This was one of the antibodies that we licensed and started co-developing with the Cubans, and this is a very interesting antibody that targets CD6. This is CD6 is predominantly expressed by T cells and B cell subsets, and it's prevalent in a number of autoimmune settings. Now these slides actually show you about the clinical trials that we've done with this antibody for psoriasis. And you can see from this particular set of slides that just one single dose of this particular antibody has had some dramatic effects on patients suffering from really very advanced forms of psoriasis. So this is now going to enter into a phase 3 study. This is the phase 3 study is going to be a placebo-controlled study. But what is also very interesting is that the mechanism of action is very interesting, and we are now finding that it can be used for other indications like multiple sclerosis. We're also going to be doing a phase 3 study in rheumatoid arthritis. We also find that it can be used in asthma and even in diabetes, in type 1 diabetes as well. So this is a very interesting antibody, a new class of antibodies, and this is something that we are quite excited to see and take to the market. So as I mentioned, I think one of our strategies, our business strategies and innovation has been about partnerships. So Dan just described the Amylin partnership that we have. This is a very exciting partnership in the diabetes field, and we're very excited about the kind of program that we're both trying to bring to the market. We have a partnership with a company called Mylan, which is a very large generics company, with whom we are developing a group of biosimilar monoclonal antibodies for oncology and autoimmune diseases. We have another very interesting partnered program with a company called Vaccinex, another small biotech company in Rochester, with whom we are developing a BioBetter monoclonal antibody. The first of these is an anti-CD20 targeting monoclonal antibody. And finally, we have a very interesting investment in a company called Iatrica. This is a spin-off of Johns Hopkins University, and with this company we're trying to develop a therapeutic cancer vaccine based on immunoconjugated monoclonal antibodies. So you can see that Biocon as a company has been very focused on innovation, and we've done this through collaborative innovation, and we believe that through these collaborative models we can actually bring innovation in a very affordable way to global markets, and that's really what we're really focused on in terms of a business model. In terms of products, we are present in 75 countries. We're very strongly focused on Europe, US, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. We operate in many of these markets through regional partners, and in the area of insulins and many of the other products that we manufacture, we have started gaining a lot of good market share in many of these regions. In India, we actually operate through our own marketing sales force. We have 4 distinct divisions. One is the diabetology division. We have an oncotherapeutics division, a nephrology division, and a cardiology division. We have about close to 750 people as a sales force marketing these products in India, and we are beginning to gain a lot of good market share and good brand equity in the Indian market. Today, Biocon is ranked as amongst the top 20 global biotech companies. We are the only Asian biotech company in the top 25 biotech companies globally. And interestingly, we are the 7th largest biotech employer in terms of the number of employees that we have. I'd also now like to sort of talk about some of our corporate social responsibility initiatives. As a company based in India, I think we are constantly reminded that we need to make sure that our products and our efforts actually reach the poorer communities in India. As you know, India is a country with 1 billion+ people, and a large part of that population is very deprived. And we believe that as a company that has grown and thrived in India, we need to give back to the community. So some of the initiatives that we have taken under the Biocon Foundation are very, very interesting business models that I'd like to discuss with you. One of the things that we decided was that we wanted to ensure that the healthcare system in India needs to be built and developed, and we felt that as a company operating in the healthcare space, we should try and do something to make a difference. In India, we don't have this concept of a national healthcare system. Well, you know, the US is now beginning to at least address that. And most people in India don't have access to basic healthcare. So what we did was we created this whole concept of a micro health insurance program. It's called in India, it's an Indian word that terminology that we've used. It's called Arogya Raksha Yojana, which means healthcare, or it's health protection. That's what it means, and it's a health insurance system. What we've done is we've, for as little as $5 per year, we actually insure these people under this micro health insurance program. The micro health insurance program actually works because of numbers. You know, although this slide talks about 70,000, I'm pleased to say that this year we've enrolled 200,000 people under this scheme. And we have a network of hospitals, clinics, and nursing homes. And we feed into these anchor hospitals where whenever people need hospital interventions or sort of surgical interventions, they go to the main hospitals. But when they need to just be treated in a simpler setting, they go to clinics. And these clinics are also equipped with labs. We also have mobile clinics and mobile labs that go from village to village and run certain things like a diabetes camp. So we do screening, we do a lot of other very interesting things under these programs. You can see from this slide that we have actually conducted a large number of quite high-end surgeries. We've done bypass surgeries, we've done hysterectomies, we've done orthopedic interventions and things like that. So it's worked pretty well, and people who have been insured under this scheme have really benefited. And we believe that this is one model that a country like India needs to innovate, because there's no way that a country like India can actually roll out a Western model healthcare system, because it would just bankrupt a country like India. So we really need to also think about innovative models of creating healthcare systems that can provide access to most of to every Indian. I mean, I think as Indians we believe that there are two things that India has to address as a country: the right to education and the right to healthcare. And so these are some of the innovative models that we are trying to develop to make sure that every Indian has at least some form of basic healthcare. We've also focused on education. Again, we find that in the rural settings, using new technologies like, of course, e-learning through computer-aided education, we actually believe that you can roll out pretty good education to most kids in rural schools. Here again, we found that children in rural India were sort of almost excluded from the computer revolution that's taking place in India. And as many of you know, IT is a big strength now in India, but again, a lot of these kids were not able to actually participate in this growing opportunity, largely because their concept of understanding math was very poor. So again, as a company, we decided let's really focus on math education in rural India. And so we tailor-made certain books, and we're using e-learning and computer-aided education to teach these young kids really high-end mathematics. Again, another big challenge in rural India is the absence of basic toilets. Many of you I know many of you live in India and you come from India, so you'll I'm sure relate to what I'm saying, but many of you who haven't been to India, you go to most of the rural villages, and many of them don't even have toilets. So the government has at last sort of started allocating some resources to building community toilets and household toilets, but as usual, the government always sort of underestimates the cost and the challenges of putting up these toilets. So companies like us have said, okay, let's partner you and really build some good toilets. So that's one of the community toilets and individual toilets that we are involved with in setting up in rural India. Again, as all of you know, you know that in this part of the world, again, water is a huge problem, and so it is in India. So I think rainwater harvesting is a big focus in India. We're again helping a lot of the village communities to develop effective rainwater harvesting models. So that's what we've been doing in the CSR area. We believe that the communities around us are benefiting from many of these initiatives that we have started. I'm going to quickly go through the financials. We've done pretty well. I just mentioned that we've registered revenues of a little over $500 million. We are very profitable. You can see that we have generated pretty sustainable profits, which allow us to actually do a lot of what we're doing and grow our business and invest in R&D more and more. So let me, come to the end of my presentation by really talking about what are the challenging times ahead in the life sciences space. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this, but I'd just like to share my thoughts with you on this. Over the last 10 years, but more so over the last 5 years, I think there's been a huge challenge that the pharma industry is facing. One is this whole challenge of stagnating sales. Their sales have just started kind of plateauing out. We also know that there's a huge challenge in innovation itself, and I just talked about it in the beginning of my talk, where I said that the ROI on research dollars spent is actually declining. Because of the approval rates coming down, big pharma is finding it more and more difficult to bring blockbusters to the marketplace. And as a result of that, big pharma is also becoming now risk averse and not investing enough in R&D. And adding to all this is an unprecedented patent cliff. Now it's really disturbing to note for big pharma that 10 years ago, the first 10 years, there was only about $2.8 billion of products that came off patent. The last 10 years saw about $10.6 billion come off patent, and the next 5 years are going to see $24.6 billion of drugs going off patent. These are really disturbing and challenging trends which big pharma has to cope with and contend with. They just don't have drugs that can replace these huge patent cliffs that are going to emerge to them. And what is even more disturbing is that late-stage R&D assets are really shrinking. There are just not enough late-stage assets. You'll see most of the products are in phase 1, phase 2, and there are very few in phase 3, and very few in the sort of approval stage. So with all these challenges that big pharma is facing, they've suddenly become very risk averse. They know that they've got to do something to change this paradigm. They know that what's been working in the past is not working anymore. And so there are things that are happening which are very obvious to the pharma world. One of the trends which is very visible right now is the fact that suddenly big pharma has begun to realize that biologics is becoming quite attractive for them. And what they're finding is that the probability of success of biologics making it to the market is a little over 20% as compared to small molecules or chemical entities, which, as you can see from this slide, are less than 10%. So there's suddenly a herd-like mentality going to biologics. And what they're also finding is that biologics in the last 5 years have been significant contributors to growth. So you will find a lot of the pipelines now of big pharma gravitating more towards biologics than the sort of chemical entities of the past. And what is also happening is that big pharma is now recalibrating in a very different way. All of a sudden, things that were not considered kosher maybe 10 years ago are suddenly becoming acceptable to big pharma today. So you're suddenly seeing big pharma saying, we're going to go into major diversification of our portfolios. And all of a sudden you're looking at pharma going into devices, diagnostics, vaccines, and what have you. And you know, they're willing to look at any area that gives them growth. What is also interesting is that big pharma is even willing to look at generics. You know, so generics was something that was absolutely a no-no for big pharma 10 years ago, but today suddenly everyone's looking at generics. And what's more, they're looking at expanding into emerging markets. That's again become a big opportunity for big pharma. Big pharma up until now used to focus on the Western markets, Europe, US, Japan. But you know, emerging markets were not even looked at as an important focus area. But that's where the growth is today. So big pharma is saying, okay, now let's look at emerging markets because that's where our future growth is going to come from. As I mentioned, there is a huge amount of risk aversion on the part of big pharma. And there is an increasing realization that they have to find ways of reducing the costs involved with R&D and the risks associated with R&D. There's also a huge focus now on acquisition and partnering of advanced R&D assets. I just mentioned earlier on that if you looked at the pipelines, there were very few late-stage assets. So now companies are willing to buy late-stage assets, partner late-stage assets, or license late-stage assets. So they want companies to actually develop these products to late stage, and then they simply want to acquire or license them. So what is interesting about what Amylin and Biocon is doing is we're actually trying to create these late-stage assets by sharing the costs and the risks involved with creating these late-stage assets, so that when we really look at these opportunities, they become very affordable, very attractive, and very profitable for both of us. So I think that's the kind of strategy we're trying to address, which we think is going to be the way of the future. And by doing all of this, they believe that the return on investment will improve. And that's what is happening in terms of the global pharma. So what are we doing as a company? We're looking at all these trends and saying, how do we now, leverage all that we have by looking at what big pharma is doing and then seeing how we can smartly fit into that particular strategy. So when you look at what big pharma is doing in terms of reducing the costs and risks associated with drug development, we're saying, hey, research services is a good opportunity because we can certainly help big pharma to reduce the cost of innovation, the cost of drug development, by offering these much lower cost of doing the same through research services. When you look in terms of diversification of portfolios, we believe that Biocon has a very nice portfolio of biosimilar insulins and monoclonal antibodies, which can actually address some of these diversification needs of big pharma. And when you look at expanding in India and emerging markets, we certainly believe that we have some very, very interesting opportunities that big pharma finds very exciting and attractive in terms of what we have to offer. And in terms of acquisition and partnering of advanced R&D assets, certainly as you saw some of the programs I talked about, we are able to take these programs to an advanced proof of concept stage, which de-risks these assets for big pharma and which makes it very attractive for them to license or partner with us. So I'm going to stop there, and I think the best thing I'd like to do is to really open it up for a Q&A, because I find that's the best way to engage with all of you, and I'll be very happy to take questions and answers. Thank you.
Okay, we have a few minutes for questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to congratulate you for the CSR initiative. I'm from India, so I sort of know that it's very important contribution which you are giving to the society. So congratulations on that. The first question I had here, the only question, is that you mentioned that it's hard to get VC funding in India, and so your business model sort of is relying on partnerships with global at a global level, and having a very hostile generic industry around you in India. Are there any concerns on preserving your intellectual property, or how do you deal with that? With so many partnerships happening here.
No, that's a good question. First and foremost, yes, VC funding is very hard to come by in India, in terms of early stage VC funding. And that's where I think the government has played a very important role in filling that gap. So we do get sort of seed funding from the government. But having said that, I think there still is a challenge to get VC funding, because again, VCs in India are not true VCs. They want sort of to invest in companies which have low risk. So you find VCs, the so-called VCs, really wanting to fund generic companies. Okay. Now, in terms of IP, I certainly think that IP is now getting much easier to protect in India. There still remains some gray areas, but not in the kind of work we are doing. So I think that the kind of IP that we are creating in India is easy to protect. I mean, the kind of work we're doing with Amylin and with other companies, we will be able to protect. But there have been some instances of, patent kind of areas or patent infringement areas which gets talked about. But those are kind of gray areas where, there was a cutoff date of 2005 and products that kind of fell on that borderline are the ones that really have not been protected that well. But going forward, I think India is very committed to IP protection. And I think once companies start innovating, I think IP will become much stronger and more robust, because I think India is very, very committed to innovation. And going forward, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Part of what you're doing in India is providing clinical research organization and outsourcing. Is that a big part of your business?
Not at this point in time, but it can become a very big part of our business, because again, as you probably know, if you look at the drug development process, almost 60 to 70% of your cost of drug development is going to be clinical development. And when you look at that, I think what India provides for you in clinical, the clinical services, is the speed and the cost of enrollment of patients, because it depends. And India is a country it's large. It has the diseases of both the developing and the developed worlds. For instance, diabetes is a very good example. India is actually, the world's diabetic capital. and we have about 40 million out of the 150 million diabetics that there are worldwide, and by 2025 it is reckoned that there will, of the 300 million diabetics, India alone will have almost 120 million diabetics. And it is said that by that same period, 1 in 5 diabetics worldwide will be an Indian. So it's so when you look at doing diabetes trials today, most global pharma companies today are doing more and more trials in India. So for instance, typically a diabetes trial which used to have hardly 5% of patients coming from India is now beginning to go upwards of 20%. So I think what is interesting is that India actually provides you an opportunity to do things, it's time to market is very important, and therefore speed of enrollment becomes a big opportunity, a big compelling reason why you should be doing trials in India. So I think the CRO space is becoming quite active, and we know as a country and as an industry that the CRO space in India is going to become very large over the next 10 years. Yeah.
Share some light on Axicor, particularly why Germany is targeted in terms of getting entry into the European markets, and what was the thought process behind it?
Yeah. Axicor again is an opportunity for us to enter into the European markets with our biosimilars, especially insulins. The founder of Axicor is someone who understands the insulin business very well, and we are actually doing the whole development for Europe through Axicor. And we believe that if we can succeed in through that strategy, it will actually open up a very large market opportunity for us in Europe.
So wondering about your leveraging and partnership, is the part that you don't pay for the actual discovery usually, and you count on other people to discover it and then you bring it in for development? Or do you have your own true discovery unit that's identifying new targets?
Generally speaking, most people don't do discovery in their companies. You would actually outsource discovery from an academic sort of effort. That's how most pharma companies do it. Like, the real discovery is generally done in an academic lab setting. And then what industry does is to sort of help to convert or translate that particular discovery into a product, And so what we've done is that we've actually not gone to academic institutes per se, except for the Johns Hopkins case, where we actually looked at that particular technology and funded a startup and said, look, let's help you to get this thing off the ground. But what we've chosen to do is to really look at small biotech companies, mid-sized biotech companies, and even large biotech companies, as in the case of Amylin, where we've looked at some of the work they've done to take some of the discovery ideas and bring them to a certain level. But then what we've actually found is that by partnering with these companies, the development becomes much faster and it becomes much more affordable. So that's the way we've looked at it.
With the statin business that you have, is this proprietary statin?
No, this is not proprietary statin. This is just basically a generics opportunity. So we actually have developed technologies for making statins, generic statins, which are then marketed, in the US, in Europe, and other parts of the world. So that was an early entry strategy for us. When we wanted to get into biopharmaceuticals, we looked at some of the quick entry points, and some of the quick entry points where we just leveraged our fermentation technology. And we said, okay, we were making enzymes all this time. Now what can we do with those enzymes? So we said, let's look at some of the immediate opportunities of trying to get into the pharmaceutical space. So
when are you going to start a brewery?
I think that's something which I left behind a long time ago. Actually, I do joke saying that, Instead of using yeast to make beer, now I use yeast to make insulin. So I don't think it's going to change back to beer.
That is a good segue to invite everyone to join us in a few minutes in the student lounge. But this has given us an enormous amount to think about and to thank you. But before we just adjourn to our reception, I want to just mention that I know you've talked a great deal about collaboration and partnerships, and I apologize for not introducing a collaborator and partner, your husband John, who's John, who's the Vice Chairman for Business Development, or Vice Chairman of the Board and Director of International Business. John, welcome. We apologize. But with that, please, I would ask everyone to thank Kiran one more time and join us in the reception down the hall in the student lounge. Kiran, thank you.
Thank you.